Have you ever felt completely, absolutely stretched thin? Like there's just zero margin for error in your day-to-day schedule? We usually internalize this as a personal failing. We think, man, if I were just better at time management, I wouldn't feel this way. But what if that feeling of having absolutely no slack isn't a personal failure at all? What if it's actually a deliberate structural shift in the civilization we live in? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're decoding exactly why slack disappeared and what it really means for our future. Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to just think about the everyday friction you experience. Maybe it's a slightly delayed delivery, or a minor scheduling conflict at a clinic, or a sick day that just completely derails your family's entire week. Have you noticed that society seems to have absolutely no buffer left to handle these things? Over the course of this explainer, we're going to reveal the hidden mechanics behind this collective exhaustion. We're going to look at the pressure, the signals, and the structure of our society to understand exactly why a tiny, everyday disruption now feels like a massive crisis. Chapter 1: The Loss of Slack and the Friction in Everyday Life. To really grasp this, let's zoom in on the layer where you and I actually live. Where exactly is the buffer missing? Well, it's missing in our time margins. It's missing in staffing. I mean, it feels like almost everywhere is running a skeleton crew these days, right? It's been stripped from logistics, healthcare, and even our own household capacity. And because all these layers are deeply interconnected, it acts like a giant domino effect. A tiny delay in logistics creates a shortage at a local business, which stresses the staff, who then go home to a family with zero time margin left. If a hospital lacks just one spare nurse, a minor influx of patients suddenly creates a massive bottleneck. Small delays in any one of these areas immediately cascade and just disrupt everything else. Chapter 2: The Efficiency Civilization. So why is this happening everywhere all at once? Well, our society didn't just accidentally lose its buffer. We deliberately built a just-in-time civilization specifically to eliminate waste. And this brilliantly illustrates the dynamic. When society is on plan, it is literally a marvel of modern efficiency. We move exactly what's needed, exactly when it's needed, no waiting around. But the moment reality goes off plan, the whole system fractures. Because everything is wound so incredibly tight, a single minor deviation causes immediate shortages, widespread friction, and ultimately deep societal distrust. So here is the hidden cost of a highly efficient civilization. Removing slack actually meant removing society's ability to absorb deviations. We systematically traded our shock absorbers for speed. We thought running our lives back to back, kind of like a perfectly coded optimization algorithm, was purely rational. But without those shock absorbers, we are left incredibly vulnerable the second our supply chains, energy grids, or human institutions experience even the slightest bit of stress. Which brings us to Chapter 3: The Anatomy of Buffer Collapse. You see, when things break down, it isn't just a series of random, unfortunate events. There is a very predictable sequence to it. Let's move to the next step and see how this builds. Phase 1: Redundancy drops. Spare staff and extra routes are cut simply because they look like pure waste on a spreadsheet. Phase 2: Buffers vanish entirely. The physical inventory and time margins we used to rely on are completely stripped out. Phase 3: Recovery capacity rapidly declines. Because things are so tight now, bouncing back from a simple delay is incredibly difficult. Which leads us to Phase 4: Capacity erosion. Small frictions endlessly accumulate until the system simply breaks. We optimized away the waste, but in doing so, we essentially ate right through our core resilience. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding this concept of capacity erosion. It's the long-term loss of society's structural ability to be delayed without breaking or to fail and still manage to recover. When a society loses its capacity to compensate for what's missing, simple everyday delays don't just stay delays anymore. They rapidly convert into public anger, institutional fatigue, and this chronic, widespread societal burnout. We are actively experiencing the erosion of our collective capacity to handle life's everyday friction. Chapter 4: Slack as Invisible Infrastructure. To actually solve this, we have to completely shift our cognitive framework. I love this framing. Slack is not a luxury. Slack is infrastructure that becomes visible only during abnormal conditions. That empty space on your calendar, that extra inventory sitting in a warehouse, that single spare nurse on a hospital floor, it's not waste, it's structural integrity. It is the exact mechanism that allows society to absorb a disruption without breaking entirely. Now, what's really interesting about this is how our perception plays tricks on us. It's driven by a massive cognitive bias. Under normal conditions, Slack looks terrible. It just looks wasteful. Idle staff, extra inventory, loose time. But during a disruption, reality totally flips. We suddenly realize that waste was actually a lifesaver. It acts as the invisible safety net absorbing the shock. Our perception of Slack is entirely dependent on how stable the world is around us in that exact moment.
Chapter 5: AI and the Acceleration Trap.
So there is a fascinating, kind of surprising modern twist to this dynamic. Society essentially operates at two fundamentally different speeds right now. On one side, you've got the AI and digital layer, high-speed processing, instant demand prediction. It's essentially frictionless. But on the other side, you have the physical and human layer. A delivery truck still has a top speed, right? Humans have real biological and emotional limits. So we have this incredibly fast digital surface trying to drive a heavy, unchangeable physical reality.
And this creates massive stress. The faster the surface moves through AI, the more the underlying lack of physical buffers is violently exposed. AI isn't going to magically fix our buffer collapse. By vastly accelerating the speed of the digital world, AI actually makes the physical bottlenecks, the ones in our homes, our hospitals, and our supply chains, feel much, much worse. This mismatch in speed creates intense structural tension. Which brings us to our final chapter, redesigning our future. So, what does this all mean for us? Where do we go from here? We need a completely new design paradigm. First, we absolutely must stop assuming that efficiency equals stability. They're often complete opposites. Second, we have to proactively identify which inefficiencies must actually be protected. We need to fiercely guard the blank spaces, the redundancies that prevent societal rupture. And finally, we have to accept an uncomfortable truth. A healthy society simply needs room to be slow. We have to stop endlessly cutting waste and intentionally start institutionalizing slowness. Which leaves us with this final, vital question. Where will we leave room for slowness? And how much future stability was actually hidden in what we called waste? As we go out and build the future, perhaps the most radical thing we can do is intentionally leave some space entirely empty. Think about the slack in your own life today. It might just be the most important piece of infrastructure you have. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep observing the structure of the world around you, and I'll catch you next time.